Welcome once again to FuturED at Casa Thomas Jefferson. Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to have our presentation in English with a very special guest speaker, Claire Venables. Most of us know her and have been to her sessions and have listened to her great ideas. Today, the name of her presentation is Making Play a Priority. And before I pass it over to her, it's important to remember Claire is a very qualified English teacher who has been dedicated to ELT since 2001. She moved to Brazil in 2011, where she has worked in the creation and implementation of English programs in schools. She has been involved in teacher education, and she has also been a national and international speaker, materials writer, and board member of two special interest groups. She is the founder and director of Active English. So please welcome Claire.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction, Frank. It was lovely. For those of you who don't know, these days I'm actually working exclusively with teacher training and materials writing. But anyone who knows me would probably also tell you that I am all about connecting with other ELT professionals to help strengthen and grow this teaching community of ours. So that's why it's such a pleasure to be with you all here this evening. And I'm really, really happy to see that so many people have shown up to hear about what I have to say in regards to play-based learning. Now, I started talking about this topic over on my Instagram a little while ago, and I was really amazed at just how much of a buzz this topic created, much more than I was expecting. And what was interesting also was that there seems to be very different ideas about what play-based learning is and how it might look in a language lesson. So that's what we're going to look at in this session today. As Frank said, this session, let me just share my screen. This session is all about making play a priority in our classrooms. And specifically what I'd like to talk to you about is how a teacher-led activity can actually provide the language support that students need for free play. And I'm going to do this by getting you to do one with me. I'm then going to show you some of the results from my classroom. And this is actually the reason why I believe that this really works. It's not just in theory, but also in practice. It's come from my own teaching practice. And I think it's then important for us to define what play and play-based learning is in childhood and in the primary years context. And then I want to advocate for and explain how we use free play in language lessons. So I think the last thing that I'd like to do is really give you an opportunity to speak up and think what our next steps might be as we face the next big challenge, right, in our teaching. 2020 has been a big surprise for us. We're moving into 2021, and I really believe that making play a priority needs to be a real priority for teachers and schools alike. Not a lot of time, a lot to cover. So let's jump straight in. I'd like to start by not just telling you about how important play-based learning is. I'm pretty sure everyone here would agree with that. I want to share my real experiences and actually show you examples of, like I said, how I've used stories and teacher-led play, a lot of things that will be very familiar to teachers here, as a way of scaffolding learning for free play in the target language. And I want to do this by introducing you to a game. And let me tell you about this, how the idea for this example lesson that I'm going to give started. And I love telling this story because I know that every single young learner teacher around the world will relate to what I'm about to tell you. Because normal people, when they're walking in the street and they see a cardboard box, will walk on by because it's an empty box in the street. But a young learner teacher, when they see an empty cardboard box in the street, they think, I could use that in a lesson. And so, as you can expect, I had a rather large collection of empty boxes in my house at home, and I wasn't sure how I was going to use them until I came across this beautiful story. It is an actual picture book, and it is one that I recommend you check out. If you can't get your hands on the physical picture book, and especially for those of you who continue working remotely, you can find this lovely animated version of the story online, and I'd like to share it with you now. It's a very short video, and let's check it out.
Not a Box by Antoinette Portis. Why are you sitting in a box? It's not a box. What are you doing on top of that box? It's not a box. Why are you squirting a box? I said it's not a box. Now you're wearing a box? This is not a box. Are you still standing around in that box? It's not a box. Well, what is it then? It's my not a box.
The end. Isn't that an absolutely adorable story? And doesn't it really tap into how children see objects like boxes? You know, you can give a child a stick or a stone and they will think of a million things to do with that. And it's the same with an empty box. But what ended up happening was when I saw this story, I realized that I had a great big collection of boxes that now had a real purpose and a really great lesson was born. And it's one that I've used with lots of different ages and lots of different proficiencies, levels of English. And so I took these boxes in and I had them sitting in the corner of the room, and the kids had come in and they'd sat down and hadn't really paid attention to the boxes that were sitting there. And then we did this story, and then we played a game, and this is the game that I would like to play with you now. If I could get some lovely volunteers, that would be wonderful. Can I get some volunteers to play this game? All you're going to need is a pen. Is there anyone there who might like to join me? Yes?
Yes, sure.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Let me see who we've got. We've got Erica's there. She's got her pen. Lovely, Erica. Who else have we got? If you would like to play with us, I'd love it if you could turn on your camera. So we've got Erica. Oh, there's everybody. Okay, now I can see you all. So we've got Elena, we've got Domingos, we've got and Erica. So we've got 3 players for this game, and maybe if you're sitting there at home watching this on YouTube, you might like to play as well. So I'm going to start this game, and I'm going to model the steps and the language. So pay careful attention, folks. Here we go. The game goes like this. And of course, I would be doing this with a box, but because we don't have boxes, we're using pens, okay? I say, what's this? And you'll reply, it's a pen.
It's a pen.
It's a pen.
It's a pen.
And then I say, no, it's not a pen. And then you say, well,
What is it?
Well, what is
very
it?
What is
good.
it
I
then?
loved how Erica and Elena did the gestures there. Can you do the gestures for me too, Domingos? Ready?
Ah,
Well,
Well,
what is
well,
it?
what is it?
What
What
is
is
this?
it?
And then I say, it's a moustache. And you say, ah.
Ah,
Very good. And now it's Erica's turn. Erica?
What is it?
And we say,
It's a
it's
pen.
a pen.
it's a pen.
No, it's not a pen.
Everybody?
Well,
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 what is it then?
what is it?
It's a baseball bat.
ah. Now it's Elena's turn.
Okay. What is it?
It's a pen.
It's a pen.
No, it's not.
You say, no, it's not a pen.
No, it's not a pen.
Well,
What is it?
What is it?
it?
It's a flashlight.
Ah.
Ah.
Ah,
Domingos, it's your turn.
Well, what is this?
It's a
It's a
it's a
pen.
pen.
No, it's not a pen.
Well,
Well,
what is it?
what is it?
It's a straw.
Ah.
Ah.
Very good, team. Let's see if you can all remember what the objects were. What's this?
A mustache.
Mustache.
Erica?
A baseball bat.
Baseball bat.
Elena?
A
A
flashlight.
flashlight.
Domingos?
A
Straw.
Very good. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much for playing that game with me and getting a bit silly.
You're
That was
welcome.
lovely, lovely. Thank you. So, folks, as you can see, this game looks like a pretty typical game that you would see in a language classroom. Am I right? It uses what Brunner refers to as a format. So it has three very important elements, and that is roles that repeat and stay the same. So there were very clear roles in that game, wasn't there? Can you work out what they are, the roles? There was someone who was asking questions, and there were other people who were giving answers. And that same person who was asking the question had to come up with a new purpose for the object. And then the roles would change as each person took a turn. And that was the structure. And you might have noticed that I was being quite specific about the language that I wanted them to use. So that's the script. So a format has those three elements: the roles, the structure, and the script. And this is really important. And you're going to see why in just a minute. I feel like this is the most common type of play that we see in language classrooms, you know. And by the end of this session, I'm hoping to convince you that this is not enough to be considered play-based learning. This is a game. And while I love games in my lesson, there is very little space for agency in this type of activity. Agency, I love that word. When introducing teacher-led games like the one I've just shown you, it's not a box. Here are a couple of tips for how you can do that. And you'll notice that it's exactly what I just did. I modeled the roles, the structure, and the script for them by doing it myself. And then we repeated those steps, letting each person have a turn. So we played the game a couple of times. And for this particular game, I was very careful about the language of play, not just the target language. So I deliberately chose, planned, and used consistently certain language, I would say, Erica, it's your turn, and these kinds of things. And you can't underestimate the value of this kind of repetition and language use. Now, you would also notice that in this game, there was a lot of new vocabulary that was emerging through the game. And I gave them an opportunity to revise that language at the very end when we went back through and we saw who could remember the different words that emerged during the game. And of course, I did encourage everyone to use the exact same language each time. And you would have noticed that I even did a little bit of a correction on Elena there just for fun. But I wanted to give this is the point in your lesson where you do want to give immediate feedback and correction on their language production, because this is what's going to provide support and the confidence for them in your free play activities. But just a reminder, ultimately, play in our classrooms should involve some degree of agency and enabling children to take on an active role and even like an ownership, really, in their experiences, as well as recognizing and trusting that children are capable. They can be autonomous and they can be agents of their own playful learning journeys. I think that's really important. And if we are only giving teacher-led play, or we're only using games in our lessons, I just feel like it's not enough. For all of those who teach adults, you would probably agree with me when I'd say you would never just give adults a lesson full of controlled practice without giving them some free practice. And I feel that's the same for young learners. And let's have a look at what the research says. One of my favorite professionals in our field is Dr. Sandy Morel. And you should really take a look at her research into English learning areas, or ELLAs, in EFL contexts. I love her work because she is looking specifically at free play in EFL contexts. And she suggests, or her research suggests, that the most effective lessons really strike a balance between teacher-led play, like the game that you just saw us playing now, but also through modeling language and behavior, supportive interactions, creating fun routines, like the routines that we have to start and end each class, teachers who are initiating games with their students. This is all teacher-led play. And we need to find a balance between that and the child-initiated or free play. And these are those free moments for children to discover on their own. I'm 100% positive that there is not a teacher here that doesn't use teacher-led play in their classes. If you ask any young learner teacher, do you use play-based learning? I'm sure they're going to all say yes. I do, however, wonder how many of us are taking that next step. How many of us really are making space in their lesson plans for child-initiated play? How many teachers are ready to do the handover? This is a great expression that's also come from Sandy. This refers to the moment when the teacher, and listen to this, the teacher puts the language into the hands of the learners and really allows them time and freedom to experiment with it as they wish. This is the moment when children can use the words and the phrases that they know in new and creative and often, and this is coming from experience, often very creative and surprising ways. Now, when provided with the right amount of support and input through teacher-led play, children can transfer their knowledge to new contexts and they can use it in ways that are meaningful for them. And at the end of the day, isn't that what our job is all about? So here's how I use this or achieve this balance in my lessons. And we're going to go back to my lesson that I was talking about earlier. So as you remember, I had all these boxes, I brought them in, the kids didn't notice them. They sat down, they watched this video, and we worked with the video. I would pause it and ask them what they could see, and we learnt new language through the video. I introduced them to the game. So again, they had another opportunity to see language like, what's this? These sentences that repeated over and over again. If you're following me on Instagram, check out my stories. After this, I'm going to share a video of a child, of a group that I was working with playing this game, so you can see it in action with the kids. But then after that game, they all looked over to the corner of the room where the boxes were. And can you imagine what happened next? Of course, it was a free-for-all. They got so excited. Suddenly those boxes were not boxes anymore. And then it was free play time. So off they went. Off they went over to where the boxes were, and I gave them plenty of time to just play with those boxes, do what they wanted with them. I would be there. I was present. I was asking them, oh, what do you think this is? It's not a box. What is it? Asking them naturally and spontaneously. And of course, we had refrigerators, strangely enough. We had football stadiums. We had computer games. We had cars. We had robots. So these boxes took on a life of their own. Now, it was still free play time. But what I had done cleverly beforehand was I had set up, and you can see it over here, I'd set up a table full of art and craft materials. I didn't say anything. The materials were just there. And they knew the drill. At free play time, they were free to use whatever was available and out on display. So it didn't take long before one child went over and started drawing on the box and sticking things on. And pretty soon we had the whole group doing that as they turned their boxes into all new things. And of course, this was a moment for me to sit back and observe, take notes about what they were doing. And it was also an opportunity for me to really interact with them and have them using that language, which we'd practiced in the teacher-led way, in a very natural and spontaneous way, once again, to communicate with me what it was that they were working on. Of course, there was a Portuguese being used as well, but what I was looking for was that genuine, meaningful use of that target language from the game, and I found it. And like I said, this is an activity which children of all ages that I've worked with, even adults, as you saw, I think Erica and Domingos and Elena loved that game as much as I did, right, guys? I hope so. But the kids loved it. And in fact, if you have a look here at this little boy, he was so proud of his box that he insisted on wearing it to school the next day. And I only know this is because this is actually my son here. He was in my class that day. And yes, he was the one who said to me that he was going to wear his box to school. And I said, no, you can't wear a box to school. And he said, Mummy, it's not a box. So I really couldn't argue with that, could I? So off he went. So what I love about these kinds of activities is they do stimulate a child's creativity. They develop critical thinking and problem solving. They're developmentally inclusive. Children of all different levels and ages can participate within their own zone of proximal development. And of course, this specific activity that I've shown you really does provide an opportunity for emergent language. So they were learning, or they were turning those boxes into whatever it was that they wanted. And I was able to teach those words in English to them. So that was really interesting. Now, let's talk about play-based learning. Let's get really clear about what it is. Or rather than something that we do, what they say is that play-based learning is really a context for learning that we create. And I love this quote here. I think it describes, or it aligns with how I see play in my lessons. This opportunity for children to make sense of their social worlds as they engage actively with the things around them. And I'm a sucker for quotes, so I'm going to hit you up with this second quote again. This quote is actually from a document called Why Play? It's an encyclopedia of early childhood development. And this document presents research findings that are also in favor of this balance that I was mentioning between free play and play that is guided and scaffolded by the teacher. Remember that scaffolding and support in a language classroom means lots of opportunities to see and hear the language and use that language before being expected to have really learnt it or acquired this language or even produce it themselves. So you want to give them lots of opportunities to see and hear it before you send them off for free play. This might be a story or a video like the one I presented. It might be a song, it might be a chant. It might be through the repetitive use of classroom language as part of your regular lesson routine. And of course, games that you play with them. It's all wonderful examples of ways we can really scaffold their learning to prepare them for free play. I want to take a pause here. The reason that I keep going on and on about this is because I'm overwhelmed with the amount of research, and you can find endless quotes that are in favor of this. But it took me a long time to move away from rote learning towards a play-based learning approach in my language lessons. And when I did, it was very instinctive. I wonder if anyone else here feels the same. I knew that there was something wrong with the way I was doing it. I knew that this constant struggle I had to get them to behave and get them to engage, and always thinking, how am I going to engage them? How am I going to motivate them? I felt like I had to do backflips to keep them interested and motivated in my lessons. But to be honest, at the end of the day, all I felt like I was doing was teaching a list of words, you know, having children be able to sort of answer the question, what's this, 1,000,000 times in a class, and showing flashcards, listen and repeat, listen and repeat. I wanted to go beyond teaching just the language. And I wanted to move towards an approach that was actually responsive to the developmental needs of the child, of course, and their abilities and their interests. And I wanted to also help them build on their knowledge of not just the language, but of themselves and the community that they belong to, and the world that they live in, and all the rest of this lovely stuff. It sounds like an incredibly unrealistic challenge, involving them and developing their autonomy as lifelong learners. And these are all things that we hear talked about all the time in lots of conferences, lots of webinars that we watch. And it does feel unrealistic when you're in the classroom for as little as 45 minutes twice a week. But it is much simpler than you think. And the answer is let them play. Let them play. You know, most of us here are familiar with this idea that children learn through play. And thanks to this growing body of research that I keep referring to, both the theory and the practice of, you know, in the early years, especially in the early years, we have a much better understanding of how all aspects of a child's learning is interwoven. So you've got the physical, the social, the emotional, creative development. I hope that this quick look at play-based learning might be useful to you when you're looking for playful opportunities that you can provide your students in your lesson. Now I want to get really real with everyone here. I want you to be really honest. I want to show you this continuum. The colors aren't the best, I think, for this slide. I regret using it like this. I should have found a darker color. This continuum has come from the UNICEF Lego Foundation's document from 2018 called Learning Through Play. And I think it provides a really useful continuum. You've got the umbrella of playful learning, and under that umbrella, you have free play, you have guided play, and you have games. And then outside of the umbrella, of course, is that direct instruction, which is all of that very controlled, I'm at the front of the class lecturing the students style that we want to step right away from. But I feel like most teachers are under that umbrella somewhere. But my question to you is, and you don't have to answer, you don't have to write anything in the comments or anything like that, but I just want you to reflect on where on this continuum does the play you provide in your lessons fall? Rote memorization and recall of information remain the norm in most of our classrooms. I think that there are many reasons for this, but I think a big thing is to do with this fear. I think a lot of teachers have fear about implementing a play-based approach to their language lessons. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what stops teachers from using free play. And I want to do this from the point of view of someone who's been listening to teachers talk about this and talking about free play and my own experience using free play for a very long time. And like I said, I've talked to my own community online recently on my Instagram account about free play, and the response was pretty interesting. It was interesting for me because there seemed to be a lot of teachers who insist that this isn't something that they can do. And some of the reasons for that are things like the school would never let me. Another reason that I keep hearing often is that I have all of this content in the course book that I need to cover, and there's no space in the lesson for free play. I think I've heard a lot of people also mention this idea that parents won't accept this idea of their children just playing. And I have had to face all of these challenges. I've worked with a course book before. I've had a school which wasn't on board with this approach. I've had to overcome the challenges of parents who weren't aligned with my own approach to teaching. But I've managed to overcome all of these. And I think they are all challenges which we can and we must overcome. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how I managed to do this. I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as educators is inform ourselves about the research and the empirical evidence which supports this choice to provide children with opportunities for child-initiated play. Because when we ourselves are informed, when our practice is principled, it becomes much, much easier to get taken seriously when you have conversations with parents and school administrations. One of the things that I did very early on when I was determined to, I'm going to be completely honest here, I did end up leaving a school where there was no room for that type of teaching. And I left because I wanted to feel more fulfilled in my work. And I knew, like I said, instinctively that something was wrong with the way that I was doing things. I wanted to do more. And so I did end up finding a school that didn't have any idea about language learning in early childhood or the primary years, but they were open to listen. And so I started a dialogue with the school about what I believed and what I wanted to try out and how I was going to do that. And that was incredible. But the second hurdle to overcome were, of course, the families who, when they were coming by or talking to the students about what class was like, I couldn't have the kids going home and saying, oh, we just played today, and parents freaking out that they were paying for their children to learn English and not getting the classes. So what I ended up doing was really focusing, and I've talked about this a lot as well, the importance of a homeschool connection. And I think that this is something that is a priority for me, and it became a big priority for me when I was introducing this new program at the school I was working in. And what did that look like in practice? It meant me showing up every day and checking in with parents. It meant me, even if it was just to say hi, to let them know that I know their name, learning parents' names, learning whose child it was, parents or caregivers. Often it wasn't the parents dropping them off, but I would speak to the caregiver and I would learn their names. I would give them anecdotes about the kids. I would build up what I call, actually Stephen Covey calls, credits in the emotional bank account, so that they already had a very positive interactions, or enough positive interactions with me to have built a relationship with these families. And the next stage then was getting them to actually come into the school. And I have a workshop that I run for parents called How You Can Support Your Child's Journey to Bilingualism. And that title was a bit of clickbait because they loved that topic. But my objective really was busting myths about language learning in early childhood. And this is where your research, young learner teachers, your research into child development and early language learning is really valuable, because when you go to have these discussions with parents, you need to be able to establish yourself as an authority in their eyes on your topic. We are not glorified babysitters. We are professionals, and we have an incredibly important role to play. So I think this was another important step as well, establishing myself as an authority, someone who they could look to and trust, that I knew what I was doing, really have them dispel these myths that they had about how language learning works. It's not some magical thing that you just expose children to the language and they'll learn. So we looked at all of that. And then the third step was, and this is another really useful piece of advice, I think, is for teachers to actually start opening up their doors and showing parents, families, caregivers, school coordinators, what's going on in your classroom. The magic that is happening in there should be shared with the world. And that's what we'd do through a day that I would call Open Doors Day, where parents would come in and participate in a lesson and from there on, it was just a huge success because they could see for themselves firsthand just how much their children could understand how I was teaching the entire lesson in English, how the children, through the routine that I had established with them, were able to understand everything that I said. And I think the results would really speak for themselves. And we did these meetings periodically. I would open up my doors on multiple occasions throughout the school year, so they could even see the progression from not really understanding a lot, but still having a good time, to understanding everything, to start producing words, to start actually talking to me and each other in English. And that's how I managed to overcome a lot of the obstacles that teachers sort of throw at me when they say, oh, that all sounds very nice, but it would never work in my context. It's not going to work for me. I believe that this really can and should be happening in classrooms everywhere. And I want to share with you as well some of the results that I've had as a consequence of this, because it has been some of the most rewarding teaching experiences of without a doubt, it was the most rewarding experience of my 20 years in ELT. And I think I want to share 4 lessons really that I've learned about child-initiated play. The first one is that for children to use English during free play, they must first be given enough support and exposure to the language and the activities, right, in a teacher-led context. So that's what we've been talking about this entire talk. And a lot of things that teachers say to me is they're not going to speak in L2 during free play. They're just going to go back to L1. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they do revert to L1. They mix, or they make mistakes with the language. And when left to play freely, that's what they do. And this is natural, and this is perfectly fine. So that's the second thing that I want you to remember. This is a process. And at the beginning, they will be mixing language naturally. But that is worth so much more to me as a language teacher, to sit back and watch children playing and be playing there together, speaking in Portuguese, and then suddenly a whole sentence will come out in English as they ask the person sitting next to them, do you like bananas? That natural, spontaneous use of English is exactly what I'm looking for, much more than them being forced to look at a flashcard and name what it is. That for me is what it's all about. So I think this mix is absolutely natural. And if, like I said, if given enough support earlier on, they will be able to produce this language and incorporate it into their own interlanguage. Now, number 3, so that's number 1 and number 2. Number 3 is that this is a learner-centered moment, and you should really take a step back. Don't try and take over or direct their play. However, I know this can be hard for a teacher who feels that they're not doing their job unless they are at the center of everything. They're doing all the talking. They are directing. They're telling kids what to do. Take a step back. Free play is learner-centered. It is for them to make choices about what they're going to play with. You can tweak it like I did. The example that I showed you is a perfect example. The cardboard boxes were there by design. The art materials were on the table by design, but at no point did I step in and tell them what they had to use and how they had to use it. And that is something that you just have to accept. Having said that, free play is not free time for the teachers. And this is what I want to talk to you about in this point number 3 that I'm making, is that you have to stay active and involved. You have to provide them support when they need it. Sometimes you're going to have to intervene when they need it. The most powerful thing that you can do in your classroom when you're working with children is take a step back and observe what they're doing and take notes about what they're doing. This is number 4. Interact naturally. Monitor what they're doing. Provide input and encouragement where needed. Play with them. But most importantly is this idea of observation and documentation of what you see happening, because this is data. This is data that you can use in your conversation with parents and school admins. This is data, most importantly, that you can use to inform your future lessons. So you can see where each child is at in terms of their developmental age and stage, in terms of their ability to produce the language. I have got a lot of references and further reading. I encourage you to start doing your own research into this. It is not hard to find resources online about play-based learning. There is so much. This is where I have started. This is the research that I've pulled together for this particular talk. And I would love to offer you a copy of these slides with links for anyone who, would anybody be interested in receiving that? In my next email to my community, I'm actually sending out a newsletter. And in the newsletter, I do a summary of everything I've talked about here in this talk today. And I also include a link to these slides. And even better than that, I have got a lesson plan, the It's Not a Box lesson plan, which I have since adapted so that you can give this a go if you are doing hybrid lessons or if you are doing remote lessons. So this and this lesson plan has been tried and tested by many different teachers already, and the results have been absolutely lovely. So if you'd like to get your hands on this email and this lesson plan and these slides, let's connect. I would love to connect with more teachers. And I'm assuming that everyone is here because they are curious and interested in exploring play-based learning in language lessons. So I'd love to get to know you better. I'd love to hear from you. Let's connect. You can connect with me via Facebook. Of course, a lot of you might already know I have a community on Instagram, Active English for Kids. But if you scan this QR code, you'll get taken to a landing page where you can sign up and you'll get sent that email. So that brings me to the end of this session. I'll just leave this slide on. I'll stop sharing now. Frank's back. Elena's there as well. It is has been a pleasure. Hopefully there'll be some questions for me. Frank, have you got anything for me there?
We don't have many questions here, but I have one from Mayan, and I have a comment from somebody you might know called Ron Trindade.
From Sebi Maceió.
Yes, he said, I've been putting into practice the things I've been learning from Claire, and my classes are going to another level. I'm a big fan of her work, of her and her work.
Wow, Frank. Oh, thanks for passing on that message from Ron. Ron, it's been a pleasure to be working with you. And this is what I mean. I mean, opportunities like this for us to share, I think it's really, really important for us as teachers to come together. And until maybe 3 years ago, I thought I was alone in my classroom, and teaching can be a very lonely profession. When you close the door, it's you and your students. But luckily, as we've discovered, especially in 2020, there is a wonderful community of teachers online that we can connect with. So look at that. There is Ron in Maceió connecting with Casa Thomas Jefferson in Brasilia and me here in Sao Paulo. I love it. Thanks for that comment, Ron.
That's nice, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, Claire, yes, go on. Elena has a question.
Yes, I do. I was wondering how do you document these moments? Like, do you have a way of documenting, or is it just like a free writing, taking notes, or do you actually like record them maybe, or how do you do it?
Absolutely. I think that any kind of evidence that you can get is really, really valuable, and it can be used, especially if you're doing what's called pedagogical documentation and you're looking for evidence of learning. So if you have written a lesson plan, for example, Elena, where you have very clear expected learning outcomes, where during the planning stage, you might be thinking about what kind of expectations you have in terms of what do I hope to see from the learners that will show me or provide evidence that they have and I have achieved the outcomes of this lesson, these objectives. So the kinds of documentation that I recommend doing there's great things that you can do with photographs. Of course, always having gotten permission to do so from families. And photographs, audio is really interesting. Have taken a lot of audio, a lot of photographs, even video. I was very lucky in that I had a classroom assistant who would often help me here, but it's really great to get in with a pen and paper as well and jot down. So if you have a document with a list of the students' names and you can jot down something about them, about each one, it doesn't have to be every single class you write about every single student, because as young learner teachers know, there ain't no time for that. You've got kids fighting with each other. You've got kids who need to go to the toilet. You've got, things happening all over the place. But observe and write down notes and keep them somewhere safe. And you will soon see that you build up a bank of data. So that's my suggestion. Use multimedia, good old fashioned pen and paper. And also if you can do like digital portfolios, I think that's another wonderful tool to add to your toolkit.
Okay, I have a question here from Ana Carolina Spinelli. She asks, when you talk about free play in English classes, do you think it would be possible with 4-year-old kids?
Absolutely, 100%. Ana Paula, was it?
Ana Carolina.
Ana Carolina, sorry, Ana Carolina. Thank you very much for this question. I 100% believe that in the early years, this type of lesson is the only way. Trying to get a pre-primary age child, 3, 4, 5-year-old child to sit through a traditional language lesson, I think is developmentally inappropriate. And free play really must be included into the program. And I've developed materials for schools in Brazil that have designed a whole program around sort of this concept of balance between child initiated and free play. And all of the best work that I've done, and you'll see this on my Instagram account, is with the pre-primary age children. So that was a very long answer to basically say, yes, you can. A long-winded way of saying, yes, you can and you must.
Very good, Claire. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. It was very nice to see, how cool, playing with kids can be. And not only in terms of having fun with them, but in terms of having them actually become active in their learning process.
You just hit the nail on the head, Frank.
Hey, Frank, can I ask Claire a question?
Please, go on, Domingos.
Okay. Claire, we've been going through lots of problems in relation to remote learning and teaching with young kids. So what suggestion do you have for teachers of very young learners to deal with children spending so much time in front of a camera, in front of their computers?
Yeah, this is a really great question, Domingos. And I wish I could come back to you with a really I wish I could answer this question confidently. The truth is that I am at a loss with what this is. I'm going to actually tell you a really funny story. About 5 years ago, I had a wave of teachers. Was it 5 years ago? Maybe it was less. At least 3 years ago, I had a wave of teachers contact me about these lessons that they were giving. They'd been contracted by companies in China to give online lessons to children. And at the time, I was doing loose parts and the drama play and all of this kind of really hands-on stuff. I was going really old school, back to outdoor play and playing with sticks and rocks and getting dirty. And I sort of listened to these teachers describe going online and teaching kids online. And I was like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to do that. Never. You won't catch me going online. Oh, fast forward 3 years, right? And here we are. And I still feel at a loss about what the future is going to reveal about this year. I don't know how this will play out and how the consequences of the period that we're living in, where we do have children in front of screens so much, and we're all doing our best to make it meaningful and enjoyable. What I keep talking about in my community and in the conversations that I have with lots of different teachers, it is focusing on what we're saying, hashtag Maslow before we bloom. And that is this idea of working first and foremost, now more than ever, on making sure that children, their families, the wider community and ourselves, that we feel physically safe, we feel loved and that like we belong, before we start working on these academic goals. So I think it's a return to trying to make real connections with children through the screen. And I think if we had more time, we could probably come up with many more ways that we could reinvent what we're doing with the flipped classroom and more sort of project-based learning, more independent learning. But this has all happened so soon. So those are kinds of my thoughts without feeling very confident about any of my opinions.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for that question.
I totally agree.
And you know what, Domingos, and to everybody out there who's watching, this is a really important conversation for us to be having. So if you are, I'd love to connect more with teachers from Casa Thomas Jefferson. It's an institution that I really admire here in Brazil, and any other community of teachers. Let's keep this conversation going. Talk about this with your peers and your colleagues, get in forums, discuss this, bring up these issues, and let's together as a teaching community support each other in this journey that we're on to come up with new solutions for very real, very serious challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, sure. We can learn a lot from each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you again, Claire.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a big pleasure for us. True, actually, And we're very happy here to have had you. And FuturED is going on until the end of November. Our next session is going to be actually on November 25. We're going to have a guest called Cher Machado on the first day of the United Nations annual campaign, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. She's a trans Black physicist and educator. She's a member of the collective of women in Preta Lab. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I haven't.
Very cool institution. And she's one of the leaders in the Wakanda Streamers. It's a collective of Black people who play and fight racism. And,
wow.
Esports and games, so she's into those games. And this is going to be the new thing about this last FuturED event we're going to have, because it's not going to be a talk. She's going to be playing games with us as she talks to us about all these important issues. So I invite you and all our friends to be here with us once again on November 25th.
Frank, how can we share information about this next talk?
Okay, we're going to have posters made, and then I'm going to send them to you so that you can share them with your friends. And
it sounds fascinating. I can't wait I'm going to be there for sure.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much, everyone who's here, and see you. Bye-bye.